Share your perspective.
Only on Cape Talk.
Time for that big appointment with the Naked Scientist. It's 9:36. And of course, your opportunity to get those questions that keep you out of sleep at night. Welcome back, Dr. Chris Smith. I missed you.
Yeah, well, I could say the same to you. You've been away for quite a while. Where have you been off to then? You missed class.
I did, but I was in a completely different class. I was in the deserts, the world's oldest desert, for the record, the Namib Desert, and I had a thoroughly enjoyable time on that side. Yeah, are you familiar with the Namib Desert?
No, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, there's not much more. I was going to ask you questions about the Namib Desert, apart from the fact that it is the oldest desert, or it is contested by, is it the Atacama Desert in South America, between 55 and 80 million years old, and it is absolutely special, those crimson sands of the Namib Desert. And I was having a jazz festival out on that side. Can you believe it?
Yeah, so, is that why you went there? It was jazz.
Yes, it was jazz.
Oh,
Jazz
right,
is
okay.
perfectly natural, just like like the desert. It was perfect, absolutely wonderful. Except we had a 1 in 100 year flood in the desert, which was quite an experience. But that's for another day. Lots of questions in. Maybe we should go there. And I think the first question is, why, Dr. Smith, do we have different blood groups?
Well, it's not just us. Most mammals, if you look at different animals, they have different blood groups as well. And we have A, B, O, and AB. So we've got 4 main blood groups. Some animals, like dogs and sheep, have many more. And it's all down to the markers. There are sugar molecules on the surfaces of our blood cells that the immune system can recognize. Those sugar molecules are encoded in our genes, and you inherit your genes from your parents. And depending upon what constellation of genes you inherit, you have a different blood group. Same for those other animals I mentioned. So we have different blood groups just because of genetic diversity. There's a range of different people in the population with different genetic makeups. We happened to, as humans, have centered on those 4 potential groups with 2 markers, A and B, and out of those A's and B's we make the 4 blood groups, because you can have all A or all B, or neither A nor B, and that's group O, or a mixture of A and B, which is how you get the 4 groups, and they're encoded by our genetics.
And then a question from Lou to Dr. Smith. What is the chemical composition of libido, and how does it affect men and women in different age groups? How can it be improved, and what products do you recommend for improvement? From Lou.
Lou, the normal driver for your sex drive, otherwise known as libido, is testosterone, or hormones that have an androgenic effect like testosterone. It's a myth that women don't have testosterone, only men have that. Both men and women have testosterone, but women have much lower levels of it than men do. They're more sensitive to its effects, but the amount of testosterone is strongly linked to your sex drive. And if you have no testosterone, you have a loss of libido. If you have too much testosterone, this doesn't mean you have an uber libido. It can actually have the opposite effect. And people who abuse sex steroids like testosterone to do bodybuilding, it can shrink your testes. So do be mindful of that before you go abusing testosterone. But the way it works is that this is a hormone. It goes into the brain, and it goes to parts of the brain, particularly the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is concerned with a lot of unconscious thoughts and control, and it stimulates various aspects there concerned with, say, reproduction. And that makes us have our sex drive. And if, as you get older, your testosterone level falls, you tend to find that, therefore, the libido falls in sync. So things that push up the testosterone level will increase libido again. But there are many factors to this. It's not just down to one particular hormone, one single hormone. In women, estrogen also plays a role because it keeps everything well nourished with blood. And this means if you lose your estrogen supply, things can become a bit more uncomfortable, which can put people off. And in men, also, you can lose the ability to perform, because as you get older, if you have damage to blood vessels, and this is all about blood flow, if you have damage to blood vessels, this can also lead to impaired performance, which can also affect your libido psychologically. So there's a healthy helping of both hormones, but also psychology in this, and aging. So best advice is a healthy body gives you a healthy mind and a healthy body. So eating well, exercising well, keeping your blood vessels healthy, But those go so far, you might need a bit of hormonal help if you get beyond a certain age. And if you are noticing a change, male or female, it's worth getting your hormone levels tested, because if they are wildly off kilter, usually too low, you can take supplements to push them back up, artificial forms of those hormones, which can reset the balance a bit and can restore normality for you.
Then a question from Keith. Keith wants to know, do you get tipsy quicker, or does it just feel like it when you're drinking alcohol on an aeroplane in the air?
The claim is you do get drunk at a different rate. There's claims, I'm not sure if it's just apocryphal or true, that people down in Russia who used to drink vodka in these deep mines did not get inebriated to the same extent as when they then came back to the surface and all of the alcohol then produced the effect. And the reverse being true on an aeroplane. The higher you go, the more quickly you get drunk. I'm not sure if that's actually true or it's just claimed. There are some suggestions that, in fact, this can make a difference, because the way in which the alcohol partitions between the bloodstream and into your nervous system produces effects may well differ with pressure, and may well also differ with the tension of other gases like oxygen. And so it might be that you drive more alcohol into the blood and then out of the blood into your tissues under different pressure and other gas concentrations. But I'm not sure I've seen any evidence that how true this is. I'm actually seeing this put to the test. So I think this is an excellent opportunity for me to do a bit of homework. I'm going to take this away and see what the actual evidence is for this, because I have heard the claim, but whether it's actually really true and true in a really functional way, as in you can really see a difference, or whether it's just a very subtle effect, I don't know, and I'm going to go and have a look.
Dr. Chris, how long is an artificial valve for the heart meant to last? Can it be replaced more than once?
It definitely can, and there are many different types of artificial valves. There are some valves which are based on animal tissue. They usually use the pericardium, the outer tough coating of the heart, usually from a pig, which you form new leaflets, which form a new valve because they have a characteristic very similar to your native valve. Those are pig heart pericardium valves. They have a shorter lifetime than metal valves. The difference is that the pericardium tends to be not needing any kind of thinning of the blood, or to a much lesser extent. If you have one of these metal valves, which have a longer lifetime, you do have to make sure you stay on blood thinners. Historically, we've always used warfarin for this. This can be a headache to control, and you have to make sure you get the limits set just right so that you don't over-thin the blood or under-thin the blood. But because these things are much more robust, they tend to last longer. They absolutely can be replaced. Sometimes we have to replace them because they get infected. Other times we have to replace them just because they wear out. Because you think how many times your heart beats in a day. It beats about once a second. So every hour it's done 3,600 beats. In a day, times that by about, let's call it 20, you're doing tens of thousands of beats a day, and over a year it's millions of beats. So these things have to be very robust, and they do eventually clap out. And it just goes to show how good your own native heart is when you think that the average person who doesn't have a heart valve replacement gets through their whole expected lifetime of 75 to 85 years, and this thing never goes wrong until obviously the day you die, which is just extraordinary as a piece of bioengineering. If only we could match that, and we're trying.
Then Neil has sent this voice note. Let's take a listen, Joe.
This is Neil from Somerset West. If Dr. Chris needs a volunteer to test getting drunk in different conditions, I'm his man.
I've already beaten you to it. I'm going to get started straight after the show.
Okay, let's go to Kay.
Morning question for Dr. Chris. Do taste buds change, or is the taste different with the high altitude? For example, there was an article saying that flavors of food that is offered on aeroplanes are enhanced to make the flavor richer, because the higher the altitude, the more the taste buds are affected. So the taste is different with a higher altitude.
Fascinating. I just thought it was bad food, Dr. Chris.
He's absolutely right that the aircraft companies do tend to choose menus which have stronger flavours, and they very often put spicier ingredients into foods. If you notice, you tend to have those sorts of spicy ingredients more often on aeroplane food than you might perhaps anticipate. And the reason for this is, in studies, people have found that there is a dulling of your sense of smell and taste when you fly. Now, you might say, oh, this is something to do with the pressure. They pressurize the aircraft, so it's at an altitude of close to the ground. It's not ground level, it's about 7,000 feet, but it's certainly not the hugely high altitude that the rest of the plane is experiencing outside. So we don't think it's down to just the pressure. Psychologists think that the reason food tends to be a less enjoyable experience in an aircraft is because of the environment. Often it's a bit cramped unless you're in fancy business class. Often it's very noisy. And also you can have very dry air on an aircraft. With hundreds of people sharing that air, it's filtered and all the water is scrubbed out of it because people are breathing out litres of water during a long flight. The place would be saturated and awash with water by the time you got to your destination if you didn't do this. So therefore the air we're breathing is dry, it's a bit artificial, there's lots of noise, there's lots of other things that would make your dining experience less fun and less enjoyable. This has the effect of detracting from the prominence and the attention you would normally focus just on the eating experience. And for this reason, we think that this distracting effect makes the food taste less good and you don't enjoy or experience it in quite the same way. So by putting stronger flavours in and using other psychological tricks, what do? You give people stronger flavoured wines. If you're in business class, nice heavy cutlery and fancy kind of nice heavy crockery and that kind of thing. And this has the effect of reinforcing the dining experience. And people tend to say, oh, the food was lovely when I had X, Y, and Z, because it uses the psychology to reinforce the dining experience and focus your attention back on the food flavours and the food overall, so you enjoy it more. So I don't think it is that the altitude affects your taste buds so much as the other factors diminish your ability to enjoy your dining experience the way you otherwise would. You can compensate for this by making the food stronger flavours and spicier, which activates other parts of the sensory system, like your sensory nerves in your tongue and mouth.
And another voice note in from Gino. Let's go there, Joe.
Hey, Dr. Smith, I just wanted to inquire. I am moving over to superfoods, moringa, chia seeds, chlorella, hope I'm saying it right, spirulina, matcha, and mainly to avoid taking multivitamins. There's obviously precautions, but is that way better to get the full spectrum of my micros and micros, I would take it, if you have any more information.
So I guess the question is, should I take multivitamins, or is that what food is for? And the answer is, it's the latter. We've evolved over millions of years, and our ancestors for millions of years before that, in order to get all of the things we need to be as healthy as we possibly can. And we've selected ourselves during our evolutionary time to get these sorts of micronutrients from our diets. Now, this is not to say there aren't people living on Earth who, for reasons often of poverty, but perhaps the environment they live in, who might have a diet that is deficient in certain things. And they will definitely benefit, if this is identified, from having supplementation of things like iron, if they don't have enough meat in their diet, or they eat things that are poor in iron. They might be short of vitamin A, for example. People who don't eat enough fresh fruit and vegetables, don't access those, might be B vitamin deficient. People with deficiencies, they can definitely benefit from some kind of supplementation. But if you have access to a healthy diet and you can represent all the main food groups at the right amounts and in the right frequencies to have a healthy diet, you will definitely be much better off in terms of being replete with all the right vitamins and micronutrients than someone popping a pill. Because pills are one thing, but they are not the way that your body has evolved to acquire these things. They're in the wrong context at the wrong times, and all they do, as some cynics have said to me, is turn these pills into very expensive urine, because many of these vitamins do not stay long term in the body. They are water soluble, and you wee them down the toilet. Most of them, because the body just ditches all this excess stuff it doesn't need, and so you're paying a lot of money for these supplements, and they just turn into expensive urine. So eat a healthy diet research what a healthy diet is. If you're at risk of being deficient in your diet because of the diet you eat, obviously take steps to supplement the thing you're deficient for. But otherwise, just get your food from your diet. Just get your vitamins and nutrients from the food. That's what it's for.
Geordie wants to know what scientists call the area beyond space. And is there an actual physical end to space?
No. This universe that we're living in is everything. It's 13.8 billion years old. And in fact, this week there was an amazing paper. I spoke to the guy yesterday who did the work, who has seen one of the first galaxies in the universe just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang, when our universe started. It was an amazing piece of work, and they used the James Webb Space Telescope to see all the way back light that's been travelling to us for 13.5 billion years. It's absolutely incredible. And you can see these initial galaxies glowing very hot and very bright. But it was from that point that the universe has grown and expanded ever since. And we know the universe continues to expand, and it's expanding faster as it grows. We don't know exactly why. We invoke a concept called dark energy, which is that as you make more universe, more space, you get more dark energy, and the dark energy is pushing things apart faster. So the faster you go, the faster it grows. And therefore the universe is inflating and expanding all the time, and that may carry on infinitely, which means that even if you could travel at the speed of light, you'd never get to the edge of the universe because it will have already outgrown you by the time you got to where it was previously. So we don't think there is an edge to this universe. But that may change. Maybe the universe will go into a reverse and it will begin to shrink back inside and contract in on itself. We don't know. And there was even speculation in the last week or two that perhaps we're living in one universe which was effectively, to put it bluntly, the arse end of a black hole in another universe. Perhaps we are inside the black hole effluent of another universe. We just don't know. And in theoretical physics, you can often prove all these things are possibilities. Whether they really exist or not, that's a different matter.
Another snake oil related question then. Hi there, Doc. Please, can you tell me what's your opinion on the copper or brass bangles? Are they of any benefit, positive, negative polarity, or please explain? I can say that it makes a difference to me, and a few other folks can swear by it. Thanks, says Paulo.
Hi, Paolo. Well, the answer is almost certainly placebo effect. In the case of these things you just wear, your skin is keeping out what's on the bangle. If it didn't, we'd all die of overwhelming metal poisoning, and there's enough heavy metal in your bracelet to poison you into next week. So there's nothing moving out of the bracelet and into you. That doesn't mean it doesn't make a difference to you, though. There's a strong psychological element here, and the placebo effect almost certainly will help. And in fact, people have looked at this. There was a paper published in I think it was the British Medical Journal about 20 years ago. They actually did a study not with the copper ones, but with magnetic bracelets. And they gave people who I think might have been patients with arthritis, they gave them either a magnetic real bracelet to wear or just a placebo bracelet. It was basically a phony one that wasn't magnetic. And they asked them to rate their signs and symptoms of how badly or well their arthritis was going. Everyone improved during the study. Everyone had about the same level of improvement, and there was no evidence the genuine therapeutic, in inverted commas, magnetic one did anything different to the placebo one. So clearly there's a lot of power of mind here, and almost certainly these things are not affecting your blood chemistry, they are affecting your brain chemistry, and everyone, when you tell people you're doing them some good, will usually report they're feeling better because of the power of mind and the placebo effect, which is very, very powerful indeed.
And then a question I couldn't quite answer this morning because Lest, I think, very aware of the fact that he's entering his middle age. He's getting up at 4 o'clock too. Older people sleep less than younger people?
Yep, they absolutely do. We do have a change in sleep demand as we go through life. Very young infants will spend 18 hours a day asleep, and by the time you get to your elderly years and anecdotage, then you may need as little as 6 hours sleep, or at least you may get as little as 6 hours sleep. Older people often nap And we all do this as we get older. We'll find that we do a bit of sleeping at other times of the day. So it's not strictly true that we will get less sleep. We may need less sleep in one go, or we may take less sleep in one day, but then we might make up for it with naps here and there at other times of the day. But certainly there is a change in sleep need when you're very, very young and your nervous system and the rest of your body is repairing itself, growing. It does most of those things when you are asleep and when you're resting. So it makes sense for a young thing that's developing its brain, developing its body, repairing its tissues as they grow and expand. It needs to spend more time asleep to do those things. As you get older, the things are going into reverse. So you tend to need a bit less sleep. So yes, there are a range of reasons why, but we do tend to take less sleep, certainly in one go, and get up earlier when we're older than when we're little.
We're going to have to rest it there. And again, big thanks, Dr. Chris Smith, lecturer at the University of Cambridge, the Naked Scientist, every Friday just after 9:30, answers all of your questions that keep you out of sleep.